On a gray, rainy evening in Boston, in the quietest corner of the university library, I sat at an ancient oak desk, staring at my laptop. The final draft of my research, 5 years in the making, glowed on the screen. Each line illuminated an overlooked facet of the American Revolution. My pen danced across a leather-bound notebook, its scratches harmonizing with the rhythm of raindrops pelting the windows. The clock struck 7. The deep, mournful bells from Harvard Square's churches announced the hour. My coffee cup had long gone cold, but I was still dissecting paragraphs, refining every sentence. This study was to be the pinnacle of my career. Every word was a fragment of sleepless nights, hours in archives, and my unrelenting passion. The library was my sacred space. High-ceilinged rooms, lined with centuries-old books on carved wooden shelves, enveloped me in the familiar scent of aged paper and ink. Soft light from the windows cast gentle shadows across my desk. Boston's academic soul thrived here. Every nook witnessed the birth of ideas. That evening, the heavy wooden door creaked open, and James stepped in. His navy overcoat glistened with rain. His hair was slightly mussed, but his confident smile was as sharp as ever. "Eleanor, this work will make you an academic legend," he said, leaning against my desk. James Harper, my colleague in the history department, had been my anchor for 3 years, guiding my projects with his insights. His praise sent a wave of pride through me. "We should present this at an international conference," he added, his eyes alight with fervor. We began discussing the study. A conference in Paris would be the perfect stage for my research. "This will rewrite history," he said, his voice tinged with theatrical zeal. I believed him. His vision would carry my words to the global stage. But our talk was cut short. A notification flashed on my laptop. "Your paper has been published under another name." My heart clenched. My fingers froze on the keyboard. I opened the email. My article, the product of 5 years' labor, had been published in a prestigious journal, under James Harper's name. Stunned, I turned to James, but he was already on his feet. "We'll talk about this later, Eleanor," he said, his voice oddly rushed, and he strode out of the library. In that moment, unease took root inside me. Something was terribly wrong, but the full weight of betrayal hadn't yet crashed down. I didn't know that James, my trusted ally, had laid a trap to leave me in the ruins of my career and honor. But I knew this: when the truth emerged, I would fight, with my words, my intellect, and my resolve, not just for myself but for Boston's academic community. My name is Eleanor Wright, and I'm 34 years old. I was born in Boston, raised among its red brick colonial buildings, windswept harbors, and modern campuses. My father was a high school history teacher. Every dinner was a lecture on the American Revolution or the Declaration of Independence. "Eleanor, history is about uncovering truth," he'd say, his eyes blazing with passion. My mother worked at the city library. At night, she read me stories, teaching me the magic of words. "Words set your soul free, Eleanor," she'd say, her voice soft but resolute. Those 2 worlds, the pursuit of truth and the power of words, molded me into an academic. My childhood unfolded in Boston's gray, rainy days. After school, I'd race to Mom's library, losing myself among the stacks. But at 12, my world shifted. My father was betrayed by a colleague. His years-long study was stolen and published under another's name, leaving him a laughingstock at school. One evening, he came home, his face etched with grief. "I trusted him," he whispered, tears in his eyes. Mom held him as I cried in my room. That night, I learned how fragile honesty could be, how trust could cut like a blade. Mom's stories anchored me through that darkness. "Evil drowns in its own shadow," she'd say, stroking my hair. Those words became my compass. After high school, I studied history at Boston University, then earned my PhD at Harvard. At 30, I became an associate professor in the history department. My work on the American Revolution garnered praise. I was invited to speak at conferences across Europe. I met James Harper 3 years ago at an international symposium. Tall, with gray eyes and a charismatic presence, he commanded attention on stage. Our first conversation stretched for hours, debating 18th century politics. "Eleanor, you're a star," he said, smiling over a coffee cup. We started collaborating, co-authoring papers, organizing panels. James was a mentor, a friend, or so I thought. Looking back, I see the signs I missed. In meetings, James would present my ideas as his own, but with such charm I barely noticed. He'd take calls out of earshot, dismissing them as nothing important. I was so convinced of his friendship that I ignored these red flags. But that evening in the library, when I saw the email, everything changed. James wasn't just a colleague. He was my greatest adversary. I shared my draft with James one evening in the library. I'd spent hundreds of nights in archives, sifting through dusty documents, decoding covert correspondences of colonial leaders. Each line was a piece of a puzzle. Each discovery deepened my bond with history. James sat at my desk, reading the draft. His eyes widened. "Eleanor, this is extraordinary," he said, his voice thick with awe. "We need to present this in Paris. You and I will make history together." My heart soared. My work, with his guidance, would take the world stage. That night, as I left the library, the rain still fell. Boston's streetlights shimmered on wet pavement. The future felt radiant, but a week later, everything shattered. I entered the faculty meeting in the conference hall. James took the stage, holding a copy of my draft. "This is the culmination of my 5-year effort," he said, reading my words with calm pride. The audience, dean, professors, students, erupted in applause. I sat in the back, breathless, paralyzed. My research, my discoveries, my heart, stolen and claimed by another. When the meeting ended, I pushed through the crowd to James. "Why?" I demanded, my voice trembling, tears burning my eyes. He laughed, a vile, arrogant sound. "Eleanor, you're an assistant. I'm a professor. This work has more impact with my name." My heart broke. "How can you accuse me of plagiarism?" I asked, shaking with rage. "Plagiarism is a serious charge, Eleanor," he said, his eyes feigning concern. "But don't worry, no one will believe you." He shrugged and walked away. The faculty turned on me. Whispers of plagiarist followed me in hallways. Students gave me sidelong glances. A journal hailed James's paper as Work of the Year. My name became synonymous with fraud. That night at home, I stood before my mirror. My eyes were red, my face heavy with shame. But a spark ignited within me. Mom's story returned. Evil drowns in its own shadow. James thought he'd broken me, but this was his final mistake. I returned to the library, sat at my desk, and opened a new notebook. That night, I wrote the first lines of my revenge. Every word was a weapon to dismantle James. The fury blazing inside me cooled into steely determination. Mom's story became my mantra. Evil drowns in its own shadow. James had stolen my career, but he couldn't take my spirit. In my small apartment, I set up a war room. Laptop, stacks of papers, notes. Everything was for one purpose: exposing the truth. I'd reclaim my research, clear my name, and prove to Boston's academic community that honesty outshines deceit. But I needed allies. I reached out to Benjamin Hayes, a journalist at the Boston Globe, known for uncovering academic scandals. We met at a cafe in Harvard Square, rain drumming on the windows as I poured out my story. "Eleanor, this is a vile betrayal," he said, frowning. "I'm in." Benjamin worked like a detective, scouring James's past publications. He found rumors of other borrowed works. A former student claimed James had lifted parts of her thesis. "He's a serial thief," Benjamin said, his eyes glinting with the thrill of the hunt. Elizabeth Thornton, my mother's old friend and a retired librarian at the city library, gave me strength. In her 60s, with silver hair and vibrant eyes, she radiated wisdom. Over tea in her cozy office, surrounded by bookshelves, she listened. "Eleanor, honesty always prevails," she said, smiling. She shared how she'd rallied the community to save the library years ago. "Bring people together, Eleanor. They'll be your power." Inspired, I launched the Boston History Academy, teaching young scholars and students the ethics of research. The project would serve the community and eclipse James's lies, building my new legacy. For 12 months, I operated in the shadows. Nights were spent poring over Benjamin's documents. The data in James's paper matched my draft exactly. I even found my handwritten notes in his files. We accessed his emails. In one, he told an editor, "This is my original work." Each piece of evidence was a brick in his downfall. By day, I led workshops at the academy. The rented hall near Boston Common buzzed with eager students, college kids, budding historians, who heard my story not as a victim, but as a warrior. Their faith fueled me. I kept tabs on James. He basked in accolades, speaking at conferences, collecting awards for my work. But his eyes betrayed unease. He sensed something coming. Benjamin uncovered the final blow, an email where James admitted to a colleague, "I used Eleanor's draft. She won't notice." It was his tombstone. On the anniversary of the betrayal, I spoke at an international history conference in Boston. The grand hall was packed, deans, professors, press. I stepped onto the stage, my heart pounding but my voice steady. I declared James's paper stolen. Every word was mine. I projected Benjamin's evidence, emails, drafts, data sets. The room fell silent, then erupted in questions. The press went wild. Headlines screamed, "Scandal at Harvard." James issued an apology letter the next day, but it was too late. The faculty suspended him. The paper was republished under my name. The journal awarded me Work of the Year. The university promoted me to full professor. But the true triumph was the academy. The Boston History Academy sparked a citywide movement. Hundreds of young scholars learned the value of ethical research. Elizabeth, locking the library one evening, said, "Eleanor, you've changed a generation," her eyes shining. Benjamin, sipping coffee, chuckled. James drowned in his own lies. I'd reclaimed my honor, but the greatest reward was uniting the community. One morning, I gazed at Harvard Square from the library window. The rain had stopped. Boston's red brick buildings gleamed in the sunlight. Mom's story was right. Honesty had saved my soul. James was a shadow of the past. I was writing Boston's future.